Video shock. Betaflight developer tries keys.
I have never seen that in my entire life.
Investigation cancelled. It's time for an ultra kiss. I'm not gonna kiss you because that's only for Patreons and only if they're comfortable. Because KISS stands for Keep It Super Simple. So let's see how it flies on a racing course, how it stands against Betaflight, a little drama comparison, how violent it stands for its principles about keeping everything simple, maybe even a little bit of Blackbox. On KISS, are you brave enough? And let's try to address some strikes on Betaflight from hardcore KISS adepts. Some of them can be pretty aggressive, maybe you can find them in the comments. For example, if you scroll all the way down in KISS Ultra Wiki, you'll find why Cranked yells all the time. Answer, it's normal. This is how he operates. And this is not a setup guide, because I am a KISS Ultra noob. Ultra noob. So let's go, but first, let's check what my KISS expert is doing. Hey Neil, what are you doing?
Oh man, just converting my quads to KISS.
But this is what you need.
No, 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 no. Ha! You weirdos wanted to see me wear lipstick, didn't you?
I don't want to be talking too sweet in this video, well, because it's boring, but I have to say what I think about KISS Ultra in general. And by the way, I am not a Betaflight representative, I do not speak for Betaflight, these are just my thoughts. So no matter what I say, don't blame Betaflight, you can blame me, no, actually blame Cole.
No.
So KISS Ultra is a closed source firmware for the quadcopter flight controllers. Also, it's a small set of flight controllers that support this firmware. And don't mix it with old KISS or FedTech. KISS Ultra is a new hype, not really new, and hype not in a bad meaning. So in this video, if I say KISS, I mean KISS Ultra. Closed source does not mean it's bad, as well as open source doesn't automatically make things good. In fact, if you want to avoid closed source in our hobby, you have to try really hard. Then you should avoid BLHeli32, Immersion RC, Crossfire, Tracer. You should fly HD0, only Express LRS, only open source frames. And you need to be flashing all that from Linux, because Windows is closed source. You see where I'm heading to? So if you are that type of a guy, you know what to comment down below. And YouTube is closed source. So you're looking at closed source pixels right now. Back to KISS, it has only one developer that does everything, coding and the hardware design. Mr. Alexander Fedorov. I might accidentally call him Fedor sometimes because his nickname is FedorCommander. And also because I'm not the smartest guy on the parking lot. And he is a very passionate guy in our hobby that deserves a lot of respect. Seriously, how smart and cool you need to be able to create a piece of software and hardware that a lot of people sincerely enjoying to use in our hobby. This is not the same as creating your shitty frame and asking your friend to cut it. We need more people like this in the world. This is a lot of highly skilled, educated work, not this. This is just a box. Alright, I am sure you're tired of me butt leaking. That's enough. Let's go. So I took my lovely Betaflight racer that flies amazing and put a KISS flight controller on it. That way I try to eliminate possible hardware problems, because if you're building quads from scratch, you never know, because we're dealing with hobby-grade electronics. And if you know that your other hardware is good, then installing KISS flight controller somewhat gives confidence. First of all, because it's a pretty expensive flight controller. Also, they claim that the percentage of bad flight controllers is really small.
Why are you filming me? I didn't do anything. I don't have anything to say to you.
And you all know that with Betaflight flight controllers, it can happen, especially lately for some reason. And it's nothing related to Betaflight, it's about quality control of the manufacturer that you choose, not me. So I slapped the flight controller on, and it was too dark outside, so I did a hover test at home. Don't do that. That was dumb. At least I did it on 3S and I had safety glasses. Still don't do that. Next day I used this rates calculator to approximately convert default actual rates into KISS and went outside to have some fun. Honestly, it felt pretty good in the air. I really enjoyed flying it. Profush handling is impressive, and I only used Ultra 2 experimental medium preset. Was it better than this quad had on Betaflight? I don't know, at least not worse. And on Betaflight I use regular karate with a couple of custom tweaks. They probably don't improve anything, but I feel cool doing them.
Because fuck you. That's why.
Also, keys felt a little bit loose at hard throttle punches, almost like it's missing a little bit of anti-gravity from Betaflight. Some people call it throbbles, you know what I mean. It's like when you do this, your quad does this. I guess during freestyle that doesn't happen very often, but during racing we jerk throttle a lot. I talked to Fedor and he says that something in the works, some sort of anti-gravity for keys, and maybe it's already released by the time I publish this video. Not much I can say just after freestyling, well, because I'm not a freestyler. Except it was very nice to play with and feels like the quad just wants to fly. I also noticed that CPU temperature was about 15 degrees smaller than on Betaflight, despite it was pretty hot outside, it's Texas. I wouldn't call it a big concern for Betaflight flight controllers because the default warning starts from, I think, 70 degrees Celsius, and it's really nothing for electronics. But still, is it because Key's board is designed better? Or because Key's H7 processor with 1K PID loop is not stressed that much? I also want to admire Key's graphical OSD. It really looks nice, and you can do a lot of things from OSD menu. The next couple of days I put Keys on the racing course at night spot, and I played with some settings trying to find what feels good for me. And Fedor himself and Mr. Cranked were kind enough to help me with that. I cranked up eye gain a little bit trying to address throbbles, played a lot with advanced fly performance settings, and I played a lot with rates, especially with this rate setting, because it does a lot of things that I don't really understand, but I don't have to. As for TPA and ESC settings, I just did whatever Keys Wiki said. I didn't have to do any of that, but sometimes I just like to play with toys. Sometimes. So on the racing course, it took me a few packs to get used to, but in the end, I liked it a lot. Very smooth experience. Sometimes I felt like Keys is not doing exactly what my fingers are asking for. Maybe I can get used to that, and I sort of did later. It's like when you're doing a sharp full stick turn around the gate leg, and you're expecting the gate leg to be here so that you go through the gate, but then you see a gate leg right in front of you. But sometimes it's good. I don't know, maybe I'm broken, more likely just a shit pilot. And of course, going back to Betaflight felt like I am at home, because I fly Betaflight for like 6 or 7 years already. And of course the rates are a little bit different, because Keys doesn't have actual rates, maybe they should. That wasn't super conclusive, so I decided to get more data and do a dumb experiment. It was the last weekend of global qualifier season and I put Keys on the line, officially with timing system.
This is wild.
I knew global qualifier course very good, I flown it a lot on Betaflight, and I even had a pretty good time on the global leaderboard. The first day went pretty horrible, I couldn't even come close to my previous Betaflight lap time. I was still struggling with this somewhat imperfection of the quad movements. The second day was way better, I had good set of mind and I came pretty close to my previous Betaflight time. Still didn't beat it, was about a second behind myself for 3 laps. Full DVR? At the end of this video, as always. Some people can say that 1 second is not much, but in the global leaderboard, in top 100, it can actually drop you down for like good 10 positions. Luckily, only your best time counts, not the last day time. You see, Neil beat me by a fraction of a second, and he thinks it's a lot. He's so proud of himself.
You, sir, are a shit pilot. Yes, pure shit.
But I had a good excuse, I was flying Keys. Ha! And I'm sure a better pilot than me can put way faster time, regardless if it's Keys or Betaflight. So I wasn't upset with Keys, because it's a completely different system, a little bit different race, what can you expect? I also have to agree with people saying that Keys feels smoother and Betaflight feels robotic.
5, 6, 7, 8.
But I have to say that it's your fingers are robotic, because Betaflight is just trying to follow the set point as close as possible. And I have bad news for you, my friend, because set point comes from the sticks. And in Betaflight, to address your robotic fingers, in RC-Link preset you can always select HD Freestyle, Cinematic, or even Ultra Smooth Cinematic. It will be so smooth, it's crazy.
Breathe in. And tune it out.
Or just...
You must practice.
Also in Keys, I played with Dshot 2400 versus Dshot 600. By the way, check my video about Dshot 2400 in Betaflight and blind test of Dshot 2400 versus 600. The link in the description.
Yo, how'd you pass me there?
Dshot 2400.
2400? No fucking way.
This time I didn't do a blind test, but I don't think I can feel the difference. Sorry, Brian. Now let's talk a little bit about Keys Ultra Mini V2 board design, because that's the only flight controller I have. First of all, it does not have Blackbox. It might not be a big deal, but even on Keys Ultra website, where you can buy a separate logger board, it says you don't need it until you need it, and I agree. And that's how I treat Blackbox also on Betaflight. I don't use it until some rare cases when I have to. And in this scenario, it's very nice when you don't have to mess with a separate board, SD cards, and can just turn it on and go. Another thing, these holes are M3, and this means you cannot use the standard gummies. So Keys Flight controller comes with these little rubber standoffs, but it's not really comfortable to use on the tight racing build, because then you cannot control your stack height, and the amount of room in the racing build is just not a lot. So I had to hard mount flight controller directly on the metal screws, which according to Keys Wiki shouldn't affect flight performance, but then every time I crash, I don't have any dampening for the flight controller. FedorCommander told me that maybe he will make these holes bigger, and then we all can use these standard gummies. And I'm not buying the story that if you have the shitty gummies, then it will give you some extra vibrations or something like this. Because with a plastic nut on top of it, you can squeeze the shit out of it. Another thing, while soldering this flight controller, I felt like it just doesn't have enough 5-volt pads. For example, look at this LED thing. Usually LED requires also 5 volts and ground, and usually you can conveniently find them right next to LED pad. Of course, you can put these 2 wires on the other side, but here you can see only 2 5-volt pads, and only one of these 2 pads is powered from the Lipo step down. And you also need to power camera, receiver, VTX, GPS. Of course, you also have 2 plugs, but one could be occupied with a Blackbox logger. So of course, it's all possible. It's just not so convenient. And if you ever had to replace flight controller during a race, you know you don't want to be soldering 2 little wires to one pad. I kinda can understand the argument that H7 processor is big, 20 by 20 size is pretty small, but check for example this Foxier mini board, which costs, by the way, approximately the same. It has the same H7 processor, it has dual back, so it has extra 10 volts if you want to power your HD0 or DJI. It has barometer, just like Keys does. USB-C, I think, is a little bit bigger than micro USB. And look at all this beauty of the soldering pads. Yes, this board is a few millimeters bigger, but they even found a place for Blackbox. And it has M4 holes. And look at that, ground, LED, 5 volt, right next to each other. I like it. But again, I don't know much about electronics and board design and these micro components, so I wouldn't be capable of creating anything, even just this box. So much respect to FedorCommander, and he heard all of this bitching from me already. Now let's talk about Keys tuning process. First of all, it's really nice that Keys Configurator is a web application. You just go to keysultra.com and there we go, no need to download anything. Flashing process is for sure easier than Betaflight, it's just less buttons to click. But we need to agree that Betaflight supports way more different flight controllers. Some of them are old and have very little memory, so of course more options comes with more buttons. But beginners don't care about more options, they just buy flight controller and they want to fly. Except it's just really hard to buy a Keys Flight controller, but Betaflight ones are everywhere at any price. The rest of the tuning, you can see way less tabs here than in Betaflight, and it's good. Less buttons to click is good, and less buttons on the tabs themselves. I just noticed that the motor wizard in Keys requires you to solder motors 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4. In Betaflight wizard, it can fix this for you if you accidentally mix 2 motors. Also, Betaflight Motor Wizard supports all kind of configurations: quads, quadcopters, hexacopters, tricopters, y-copters, whatever it is. But who cares about all of these weirdos? The aux configuration is pretty neat, just a small panel instead of a whole tab, but I think it's kind of harder to set up, because first of all, I don't think it has auto-detect for your aux switches, so you kind of have to memorize that, alright, my aux 7 is turtle mode and aux 9 is my buzzer. And also you need to remember what the values are for the aux channels. So I personally think that in Betaflight it's a little bit more convenient. And also in Betaflight, if you want to, you can do a weird logic here, combining different aux channels and depending one mode from another mode. Now I'm just sitting and bitching about someone else's work. That's not nice. Sad YouTuber Destiny. Let's keep going. First time in my life, in the radio, I had to set a specific order for the first 4 channels, yaw, pitch, roll and throttle, because Keys requires a certain order. Now I either need to change all my Betaflight quads to this order, or have 2 different models on the radio. It's not actually a big deal. None of that is a big deal, I am just splitting hairs. PID tuning. It's really cool that presets are right here and you don't need to go to like a separate tab. And you also don't have to worry about RC Link presets like you have to with Betaflight. Check for example Betaflight PID tuning tab, look at that. It can be scary, and this is not even expert mode, this is expert mode. So if you're type of a guy that just feels the need of touching every parameter that you can see, then you're kinda in trouble in Betaflight. For example, let's see, dynamic damping advanced 20, let me change it to 55 and just see how the idle don't even know was that. I feel like in non-expert mode, we can like just hide the whole thing because we have presets now in Betaflight. So I am type of a guy that can just see through the things that I don't need and that I don't use. It doesn't bother me, but I understand there are different people. So here's an advice. If you're a beginner, please don't think that you need to change and tune all of that. But still, keys configurator looks simpler, you can't argue. But let's seriously talk about sliders. Dear keys fans, what is actually wrong with you? I feel like if keys community agrees, it wouldn't be hard for Fedor to make it happen. For example, I wanted to add a little bit of eye gain, so I sat down and started typing here, then here, and then typed here. In Betaflight, it's just one slider. You push, move, and release. And even this preset, default, medium, and high, is just a PD gain slider. And even in the keys official wiki, you operate with PD gain, master multiplier. These are just sliders. Do I have to use my calculator to maintain the same ratio between PID? And look, in the wiki page, a little bit down below, what is that? Is it the slider that we don't get to see? Is it something they're working on? I don't know, but it certainly looks like slider. It's like, imagine for the Windows sound adjustments, you would have to type the value right here instead of just moving this slider. And for you keys guys, it wouldn't be going from 0 to 100, it would go from like minus 2.5 to plus 0.57. And the same for filter tuning, look at that, there's a drop down that goes from very low to high. This is just a slider, except with a drop down, you cannot fine tune it, and it's like one more click. And the same for advanced filter settings. Look, there's just 3 sliders, except there are drop downs, but the idea is just the same. I don't actually mind too much these drop downs, but the PID sliders, I don't quite understand, especially if the official wiki page operates with the slider terms. But please, let's be polite in the comments. I understand that bitching on YouTube is just way easier than programming firmware. VTX configuration is way easier in keys. You don't have to apply any preset, no VTX tables, you just select from the little drop down and you're good to go. Nice. LED configuration is also much easier than in Betaflight, but it has less options. You can't have your key squad flashing with different colors like a Christmas tree. TPA tab. I think this is the only place where keys has more buttons and options than Betaflight. You can even do some stupid TPA curve like this if you need to. Some people like to fly this default TPA curve, and they say it allows you to tap obstacles at 0 throttle without making motors too excited. I don't know much about that. I prefer all the control at 0 throttle, especially because motors are already weak there. But that's an option in keys that is missing in Betaflight. Nice. Finally, OSD tab. This is something super key special. But before I start talking too sweet, let's add a little bit of bitter. Here you can change the background preview video, which is not much useful, but actually fancy. But to hide or add OSD elements or warnings to my taste from user interface, it's a little bit too much clicks. You need to open menu, go to OSD editor, click this button, and then like clicking here like yes or no. In Betaflight, it might be somewhat easier. Yes, it's a big list, but it's in alphabetical order, and then you just click element and it appears right away. And you can have OSD profiles and rate profiles and PID profiles. But of course, more options come with more buttons. Same for warnings in Betaflight. It's just a list of toggles, then you just click and save. By the way, for some reason, by default, keys doesn't have a warning for low battery, so you need to turn it on. Yes, it has a voltage value, and it even blinks from white to black, not like in Betaflight it just disappears and then appears back. When I'm having too much fun, I don't look in the corners. I just can't. So, set battery noises, I discharged a few of them to 0, before I figured out what's up. But Keys OSD is actually fancy and super impressive actually. Keys flight controllers don't have analog OSD chip because all the rendering is happening on H7 processor. And it's a graphical OSD, not text. You can even call it canvas mode. That allows to have transparency, nice frames, and even plots right here in OSD. And the same works for DJI, canvas mode, all the fancy stuff. I'm not sure about HD0, but DJI for sure. And the picture you see right here is actually being rendered on the flight controller right now. So if you put your goggles on right now, you'll see exactly the same picture. This is fascinating. And on top of that, there is a backup button that saves only your OSD settings. Betaflight, eat that. After making presets for Betaflight, I was actually thinking to make it happen there too, but bitching to microphone is way easier. Although still hard, especially with the cat mewing around. Now Blackbox on keys. For real nerds. And you know the rules. If you're still here, you gotta comment about that. And you can add Ivan, I'm weird as fuck. So I taped the logger to the arm, not super nice, but it works. At least for a few packs, until I crashed, and then SD card went pew, and it never came back to me. SD cards also need return to home. I'm not the smartest guy out there, I could have taped SD card too, but I try to keep it super simple because keys. At least I copied a couple of Blackbox files before the incident happened. So there we go, we are staring at keys Blackbox. First of all, the motor traces here at the top are not super clean and also not super dirty actually. I've seen worse on Betaflight and I definitely seen way better. But I'm pretty sure it all comes down to the filter tuning with sliders. With that said, keys motors are not cooler than on Betaflight. The weird thing that sometimes you can see these little ticks on gyro traces. But I agree with Fedor here. They're so quick, they shouldn't affect flight performance. Maybe I just have a little bit of faulty flight controller, or I don't know what's that. Maybe I crashed it and then it started happening, because I crash a lot. But if it was a common keys problem, I'm sure they would have noticed it before me. If we check the gyro traces before and after filters, I wish we knew the exact low-pass filter cutoffs. But you can see that pre-filter gyro is actually already pretty smooth, and it could be because Keys is using pretty fancy gyroscope, so software filters doesn't need to work that hard. Interesting thing, according to Fedor, Keys uses some sort of RPM filters, not like Betaflight RPM filters, but still it receives eRPM by telemetry wire and somehow adjusts the secret filters accordingly, without knowing the number of magnets on your motors. So on mini quads it might not be super precise, but most of us fly 14 magnets anyway. Now set point versus gyro means how close your quad following your fingers. So when my fingers are asking for 600 degrees per second, my quad is doing 900 degrees per second. Maybe I have wrong settings for the plots because it was kind of tricky to have them match, but you can also see the numbers right here. Okay, I'm glad I just asked Fedor that the set point in the current black box is not to be used. He plans to put correct set points plots in the black box in future. But that explains why sometimes I felt like my quad is turning too fast or way too slow, because I just didn't used to fly 800 degrees per second. So this rates calculator just doesn't work for Keys Ultra. And I need to read the description about rate gyro influence one more time. I already read it 10 times and Fedor tried to explain it to me. I still didn't get it. My poor Betaflight brain. I also noticed that my RC Link sometimes have missing frames. What the hell, Ghost? Mr. Tony, we need answers right now. So with all that, we have to leave set point tracking question as unclear. Boom. And investigation cancelled. At least until Fedor adds set point in the black box, which might be coming in September. That's what rumors say, with some other features. At the end of the day, you fly whatever you feel good with. As for me, I'll probably leave this quad on keys, because that's interesting. But for general purposes, I'll stick with Betaflight, because I think it flies just as nice, and I'm taking part in Betaflight development time to time. And more importantly, Betaflight has RPM limiter, which becomes essential for modern racing. Street League, Freedom Spec. By the way, if you don't know what is RPM limiter, I have a video about that, link in the description. As always, please consider subscribe to my Patreon, it keeps me motivated and other sweet words. Sometimes I post there little funny previews, and I also spend some time to review black box from my Patreon subscribers if they have any questions. But I also review black boxes from other people, so I guess you don't have a reason to subscribe to my Patreon. By the way, not like I'm a black box expert, I am not, but for some reason people think that way. Anyways, that's gonna be it for today. See you in the next video, if I'm not lazy.
Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah.